It's pretty much exactly a year since I came back to indie music software development. A year on, I'm launching my first bundle of everything that's available in my store today, the Everything Bundle. And it's got me reflecting on all of the products I've made, my journey as an indie music software developer, and how things have changed in the last decade. It's still possible to make a living as an indie dev in 2025, but a lot has changed. So I'm going to run through my journey as an indie dev and my reflections on how music making and software development has changed and where it's going. The oldest products in the Everything Bundle were originally launched back in 2017. That's such a long time ago that actually coming back to them, I've basically forgotten how they work and what they do. So I pretty much feel like a customer using them for the first time, which is actually quite enjoyable. Slooh, shed loads of oscillators, and SLO, shed loads of resonators, are both built around a swarming engine that I built. It's basically unison mode taken to the extreme, where every parameter can be spread and the spread offsets can be randomized and morphed. Slooh is a synth that uses 48 oscillators in unison mode and spreads them in different ways according to how you play the keyboard, how you spread the parameters, and how you interact and randomize the parameter spreads. It's really good for getting kind of polyrhythmic, harmonic, and melodic beds that shift over time. A lot of the heavy lifting for that is a multi-mode LFO I built, which, when synced to the tempo, has some really nice attributes which give rise to complex polyrhythms when their parameters are spread and randomized. It's also really great for quite drastic shifts using the morph control at the top. SLO is an effects processor. Here I'm using it with one of Ableton's stock techno loops. It uses 32 resonators running in parallel with the same control architecture as Slooh, but because it's an effect, it feels completely different to use. Here you can hear it behaving a bit like a normal resonator, but in SLO's case, the resonators are actually audio reactive, so you can hear the resonance tail is actually being modulated by the incoming audio signal, which gives it a much more controlled sound. Like Slooh, it's got the same swarming, morphing, and polyphonic LFOs, so you can use it for more quite drastic timbral shifts, but this time as manipulations to incoming audio rather than pure synthesis. In some ways, Slooh and SLO are kind of predecessors to Scape Shift and Pattern Shift, which are also part of the Everything Bundle. Scape Shift and Pattern Shift are both standalone systems designed for generating complete musical structures, whereas Slooh and SLO are more like kind of wild sound design tools which fit into your production or performance workflow and are designed to be used alongside other tools. Like everything I build right now, they're built in Native Instruments Reactor. So I've been building things in Reactor for over 25 years, so I know it inside out. Even though it's old, it's still super powerful and as relevant in 2025 as it was in 2000. And this is one important thing that I've learned. Don't underestimate the skills that you've developed. Don't get distracted by hype about new technology, just stick to what you know. If, like me, you're curious about new technology, it's really tempting to try and learn all the new things. But if you're independent, it's so important to stick to what you're good at. Getting good at new things always takes longer than you hope, no matter how energized or inspired you might be. If you find yourself in a position where you can spend a year or two learning something new, that's great. In honesty, that's where I want to get to. I'd love to learn C++, but pouring time into learning new things at the wrong time can be the difference between having a sustainable business that supports you and your family and having to get a real job. After releasing Slooh and SLO, I took a few years out to build a platform for collaborative music creation. That was kind of the opposite of independent, with a big team and lots of investors. It's a long story for another day. I'm still kind of processing it, to be honest, but the long and short of it is that after a battle with cancer, which I thankfully won, it didn't work out. I learned a huge amount in the process though, and knowing how things work in the more corporate world, it's given me a massive appreciation for being independent. As soon as you go down the corporate route, your main product is your company. You spend way more time and energy selling shares than selling products. After I got back to being an independent software dev, I started building my first new product actually in my hospital bed while I was recovering from cancer. So I've been interested in generative systems for a long time. My first explorations into that world with Slooh and SLO gave me a good foundation to take it to the next level with Scape Shift and Pattern Shift. I love the idea of systems that unify the end-to-end process of music making, from pattern generation and arrangement to sound generation and mixing and mastering. In my mind, I call this 360 synthesis, because it's basically synthesis that's taking care of every aspect of music production. And this is what I wanted to achieve with Scape Shift and Pattern Shift. Scape Shift and Pattern Shift share the same generative engine. The most unique thing about this engine is that everything, including the pattern generators, is parametric. So rather than entering sequence data on a piano roll or a step sequencer, you dial in sequences using knobs that control complex mathematical algorithms. This means that any state of the system can be continuously morphed into any other state. You can also do things like cross-breeding patterns by selecting some parameters from one pattern and other parameters from another one. On top of this, every sound parameter can be modulated using the same complex parametric pattern generators, which gives the whole system a very expressive and flexible sound. Scape Shift turns this engine into a generative composition tool. It's designed to sit inside your DAW as a plugin or in the Reactor standalone app, and gives you a palette to explore and capture patterns which you can then lay out in a sequence to build a full track. When I built it, I was actually thinking a lot about generative AI tools, not the ones that actually exist, but what I imagine a really fun generative tool should actually feel like to use. Fast, flexible, occasionally unpredictable, but easy to tame and sculpt into something that you can call your own. Pattern Shift takes a Scape Shift engine and reimagines it as a live performance tool. I'm actually using Pattern Shift in my new live show. I'm making a video about that right now, so do subscribe if you want to see that. For Pattern Shift, I wanted to transform the engine into something that feels like a standalone piece of hardware. I chose Ableton Push 2 for this as it's affordable, it's readily available, super powerful, and crucially has a built-in screen which you can send graphics to. Building a bespoke hardware experience was pretty much like building a completely new product from scratch. The engine is the same, but everything else is different. I didn't just want to build a performance machine, I wanted to build a performance preparation machine as well. Basically, a complete end-to-end system for exploring and coming up with new patterns, saving them down, then curating them into collections which could then be performed and manipulated live. My biggest takeaway from building Scape Shift and Pattern Shift is the importance of having a creative vision if you're an indie developer. I see a lot of products these days that are basically slightly different takes on things that have already been done and have proven successful. I mean, I totally understand why you do that. It's important to kind of minimize risk as a developer, but as an independent developer, it's way more important to have a creative vision and trust it. Having creative vision is really the superpower of being independent. Creating products that directly compete for market share against other existing products is actually something that's really hard to do. It might be easy to make the product, but then marketing it and supporting it is a lot more work. I think the whole strength of being independent is thinking independently. It's much more like being an artist than a business. It's about taking advantage of the opportunities of being small, maybe even like me, just one person doing everything. One of the biggest advantages that you have as a solo developer is that you don't need to get anyone else on board before you get to work building your idea. In a big company, getting an idea greenlit can take dozens of sign-offs, and each of those sign-offs will have slightly different ways of seeing things, so it will be a huge effort to actually get the idea through, if you get it through at all. The other great advantage of being able to move fast towards making your ideas a reality is that you get to learn from your audience and get ideas for new products really quickly. So the last product in the Everything bundle, Finalist, actually came from that process. As part of my goal of achieving 360 synthesis with the Scape Shift engine, I built a whole multi-band mixing engine. Once Scape Shift was out, I actually had a lot of interest from people who wanted to use that engine to mix their own stems. So I started thinking through how a product like this might work and going deeper into taking that mixing engine to the next level. I wanted to make it super simple and delightful to use, so I started thinking about the user experience from the get-go. I had to work around quite a few limitations of Reactor. For example, you can't show file names as text in the Reactor UI, so stem auditioning had to be super slick and obvious. Because Reactor is quite an old framework, it's actually quite a bit harder to build a modern looking UI than it is with more modern frameworks, but it's still super powerful in other areas, so really worth the trade-off. One thing Reactor is still way ahead of the field at is designing DSP. So it was easily powerful enough to go into the minute detail that I needed to build the Finalist engine. It actually worked so much better than I thought it would, which was a really great surprise. In some ways, Finalist is kind of less like an independent developer type of product because it's much less niche. Finalist can do a great mix for pretty much any modern genre, so it's potentially quite mainstream. But the way it works is definitely quite different from what's out there. Having the freedom to be able to experiment with new ways of doing old things is very much an advantage of being an independent developer. It's been amazing to see the reception that Finalist has got since I launched it, and it's still early days since it only came out last month. So that completes my journey as an independent developer over the last decade or so. But how are things actually different in 2025? Firstly, there's just a lot more people developing software now. I don't have the actual numbers, but it really feels like multiples. So it's a lot more noisy and it can be hard to cut through the noise. I'm really lucky that I started building an audience for my products many years ago. In many ways, the principle of how to build an audience is the same. You just have to keep putting content out there and it has to be good. And this brings me on to point 2. The way we get attention now is very, very different. So a decade ago, you could take a long time to tell a story about something and to get to the point about it, but nowadays you have to get right to the point within the first 3 to 5 seconds of a video, else you just miss people's attention. There's some positive and negative aspects to this. The positive is that it makes you really disciplined about how you communicate about products. Today, when I build a product, I'm thinking about how to communicate about it as soon as I start building it. But on the downside, in 2025, it's much harder to just follow your nose, build cool things, and put them out there. 10 years ago, the philosophy of build it and they will come kind of still worked, but today it just doesn't. You really need to be as focused on how you're going to get awareness of your products as you are on actually building the products themselves. The third thing that was really different in 2017 was how much more hassle it was to actually set up a web shop. Back then, it was basically Shopify and WordPress and a few different plugins that were available for those services. In 2025, there's so much more choice of ways to sell software online. There are some really great platforms for independent software developers such as Lemon Squeezy, which is what I use for my new shop. It takes care of all the complicated tax settlements, which is really, really great. My actual website is built by my mate Josh in Webflow, which is an amazing platform. And of course, with LLMs, it's way easier to solve problems and figure out how to do things on your own. The fourth point is that although it's easier to sell things online in 2025, it's also way more expensive. The first shop that I launched in 2017 cost about £30 per month all in for Shopify, web hosting, and this service called SendOwl, which I used for sending out license keys, on top of a 3% transaction fee on all transactions. The shop I run now costs many hundreds per month in fees for all the various different services I use. Another risk of being heavily reliant on a platform is that they can jack up prices once you're locked in. Thankfully, I haven't really experienced much of this, but in the case of SendOwl, they increased their prices by a huge margin early this year. Fortunately, I wasn't too dependent on their service, but if you do end up getting locked in, you can become the victim of unfriendly behavior like this. It's always good to have a backup plan for any of the services that you use in case something like this happens. The other thing that's more expensive is advertising. I first started trying out advertising things on Facebook in 2017, and it was just way cheaper then. In 2025, you need extremely good targeting and creative to make more money than you spend on advertising there. I think this also has a lot to do with there just being so many more developers out there competing for your attention these days. My final point about being an indie music software dev in 2025 is generative AI. So there are lots of doomsayers out there saying that generative AI is going to kill music making and the market for music making tools. So maybe controversially, I actually think the opposite is happening. More and more people are coming to appreciate the craft of making music and building performable music making systems kind of as a matter of just self-actualization. I personally think for this reason, live performance is a huge opportunity as more people want to see real proof that the music they're listening to is actually made by a real human. So far, most music software development has focused on tools that help producing tracks and making recordings. So working on new tools for live performance is definitely where I'm going to be focusing a lot of my efforts over the next year or so. Okay, that's it. If you like this, please like and subscribe, and if you're interested in the Everything Bundle or any of the products I've mentioned in this video, the links are in the description. See you in the next one.